Emily Parker had dreamed of working abroad ever since she graduated from nursing school in Ohio. When the offer came from a top private hospital in Dubai, she didn't think twice. It felt like destiny, a chance to start fresh, to escape the monotony of her small-town life, and to finally make something of herself. The contract promised excellent pay, free housing, and international exposure. For Emily, it was more than a job. It was a new beginning. Her first impression of Dubai was overwhelming. The gleaming skyscrapers, spotless streets, and endless desert sunsets all seemed too perfect to be real. The Al Zahra Medical Complex, where she had been assigned, was equally impressive. It stood tall among luxury hotels and office towers, its glass exterior reflecting the desert sun like a mirror. Inside, everything was spotless and humming with efficiency. The staff came from all over the world, and the hospital's reputation for cutting-edge care made Emily feel proud to be part of it. In her early weeks, she worked tirelessly, taking on extra shifts and volunteering to assist in complex surgeries. Her dedication quickly earned her praise from colleagues. The senior doctors admired her attention to detail and calm demeanor under pressure. Among them was Dr. Karim Al Mansoor, a name that carried weight within the hospital. He was a senior cardiologist, known for his skill in the operating room and his sharp, composed presence. Patients trusted him without question, and other doctors often sought his approval. Karim was in his late 30s, handsome in a quiet, confident way. His voice carried authority, but his smile softened it. Emily noticed how staff straightened up when he entered the room and how effortlessly he commanded respect. He noticed her too, the new nurse with bright eyes and unshakable focus. She reminded him of himself years ago, full of ambition and drive. Their interactions began as nothing more than professional courtesy, polite smiles exchanged between shifts. But it didn't take long before those moments lingered longer than they should have. Karim was married, and everyone in the hospital knew it. His wife, Layla, was a respected architect, and together they had 2 young children. He often spoke fondly of them to his colleagues, though in truth his marriage had grown distant. Layla spent long hours at her firm, and Karim had buried himself in work. The connection between them had faded over time, replaced by silence and routine. Emily entered his life when that emptiness felt unbearable. It started subtly. A brief conversation in the cafeteria, a ride home after a late-night shift, shared coffee in his office while reviewing patient files. Their bond deepened with each passing day, and the hospital corridors became the silent witnesses to their growing attraction. Emily felt both thrilled and nervous, aware of the danger but unable to stop herself. Karim, too, knew he was crossing a line but convinced himself it was harmless. A friendship, nothing more. Yet, as weeks turned into months, the line between professional and personal blurred beyond repair. What began as mutual respect soon evolved into something neither could control, setting the stage for a tragedy neither saw coming. The affair between Emily and Karim developed quietly behind the pristine walls of Al Zahra Medical Complex. At first, it seemed like an innocent connection, 2 professionals drawn to each other by shared dedication and long, stressful hours. But as their stolen moments grew longer, their secret relationship began to take a darker turn. The hospital, with its endless corridors and silent wards, became their hiding place. They met during night shifts when the halls were nearly empty, sharing glances that spoke more than words ever could. What had started as harmless affection soon turned into an addiction neither could resist. Emily believed she had finally found something real. Karim made her feel seen, appreciated, and special in a world where she often felt invisible. He would compliment her hard work, help her with difficult patients, and offer advice that made her feel protected. Over time, her admiration turned into dependence. Karim became the center of her life, and she began to dream of a future with him. She imagined a day when their love would no longer need to hide behind closed doors. But Karim's life outside the hospital was nothing like she imagined. He was still a husband and father, bound by responsibilities and a reputation he couldn't afford to lose. At first, Karim told himself he could manage both lives, the devoted doctor and family man by day, and the passionate lover by night. But secrets have a way of weighing on the soul. He started to notice the guilt in Layla's eyes when he came home late, the suspicion in his colleagues' glances, and the unease in his own reflection. The once confident doctor began to crumble under the pressure of his deception. It wasn't long before rumors began to circulate. The hospital was a place where whispers spread faster than infections. A cleaner mentioned seeing Emily leave Karim's office late one evening. Another nurse claimed they were spotted together in the parking lot after midnight. Karim tried to ignore the gossip, but it grew louder each day. Even the hospital director began asking questions about his mentorship of the young American nurse. Emily sensed the change. Karim had grown distant. His messages became shorter, his tone colder. He started avoiding her in public, acting as though they barely knew each other. When she confronted him, he reassured her that everything was fine, but his eyes told another story, one filled with fear and regret. The balance between them began to shift. Emily felt betrayed while Karim felt trapped. Then came the turning point. Layla received an anonymous message with a blurry photo of her husband standing close to Emily in the hospital hallway. Karim denied it, but the damage was done. His wife's trust was gone, and the threat of exposure loomed large. For Karim, his reputation meant everything. For Emily, his love meant more. The walls that once concealed their secret now began closing in. Every corner of the hospital reminded them that their affair was no longer a secret. It was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The tension between Emily and Karim grew unbearable in the weeks that followed. What had once been passionate had turned into a series of arguments and cold silences. Emily was tired of waiting for promises that never came true. Karim had assured her again and again that he would leave his wife, but now he barely looked her in the eye. She began to see him not as the charming, caring man she had fallen for, but as someone who had used her when it suited him and was now trying to make her disappear quietly from his life. Her breaking point came when she accidentally overheard two nurses talking about Karim's upcoming family vacation to Paris, a trip meant to celebrate his wedding anniversary. The words struck her like a knife. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that while she had given up everything for him, he still lived comfortably in the world she could never enter. That night, she confronted him in his office. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she accused him of lying. Karim tried to calm her down, but his attempts only fueled her anger. She threatened to tell everyone, the hospital administration, his wife, even the media. She said she had saved messages and photos that could destroy his life. Karim's composure shattered. For the first time, he saw not a lover, but a danger. If Emily went through with her threat, everything he had built, his career, his family, his reputation, would be gone. He begged her to reconsider, promising to talk things over after his trip, but Emily didn't believe him. She walked out of his office that night, determined to end the lies once and for all. The next day, Emily didn't show up for her morning shift. Her supervisor assumed she was sick, but by evening, concern began to spread. Her phone was unreachable and no one had seen her leave the hospital. Her car was still in the parking lot, her apartment lights off, her things untouched. When security checked the CCTV footage, the last recording showed her walking toward the hospital basement around midnight. She was carrying a file and wearing her uniform. No footage showed her returning. Karim tried to appear calm during the investigation, even offering to help in the search. But behind his composed face, panic brewed. He deleted messages, wiped his phone, and stayed close to his office as if nothing had happened. Yet his colleagues noticed how he avoided certain hallways and flinched whenever Emily's name was mentioned. Days turned into a week, and the case shifted from a missing person report to a suspected crime. Police began questioning staff members and rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that Emily had run away after being rejected. Others suggested something darker. Only Karim knew the truth, a truth he hoped would never surface. But deep beneath the hospital, hidden in the forgotten basement, the evidence of his crime waited silently to be found. A week after Emily's disappearance, the hospital had begun to settle into an uneasy rhythm. Officially, her case was being handled by the police, but among the staff, suspicion hung in the air like a fog. Every whisper in the corridor carried her name, and every dark corner seemed to echo her absence. Patients sensed it too. The usually calm, professional energy of the hospital had been replaced by something heavy and fearful. Karim went about his rounds with practiced composure, though his eyes had grown tired and his hands trembled slightly each time he signed a report. No one dared confront him, but everyone noticed the change. It was a maintenance worker named Javed who first reported the strange smell. He had been assigned to check the old storage basement, a part of the hospital that hadn't been used in years. The area was dark, with flickering lights and walls stained from old leaks. When he unlocked the heavy door, a wave of decay hit him so hard he staggered back. At first, he thought it might be spoiled medical waste or a dead animal. But when he followed the smell, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A rolled-up medical sheet, secured with duct tape, stained dark in several places. He didn't open it. He ran straight to security. Within an hour, the police arrived and sealed off the basement. The entire hospital fell into silence as officers carried the sheet out on a stretcher. When they unwrapped it, the truth came out. Inside lay Emily Parker, her face pale and bruised, her hospital ID still pinned to her uniform. The sight was enough to make several staff members cry. The woman who had once brought life and warmth to her patients now lay lifeless in the same building she had devoted herself to. The post-mortem report confirmed the worst. Emily had died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely inflicted with a heavy object. The time of death matched the night she disappeared. Investigators began combing through security footage, interviewing staff, and collecting fingerprints from the basement. Karim was questioned like everyone else, maintaining an air of calm professionalism. He told police he hadn't seen Emily for several days before her disappearance and that their relationship had been strictly professional. But inconsistencies began to surface. One of the cleaners mentioned seeing Karim heading toward the basement that same night, wearing surgical gloves. A nurse recalled hearing raised voices coming from his office shortly before midnight. Investigators pulled the security footage again, analyzing it frame by frame. Then they saw something chilling, a faint reflection captured in the metallic edge of a cabinet near the basement door. It showed Emily walking down the hallway, followed seconds later by a tall man in a white coat. Though his face was blurred, the reflection of his ID badge was unmistakable. It bore the name Dr. Karim Al Mansoor. The discovery shattered his carefully built facade and turned a missing persons case into a full-blown murder investigation. The morning of Karim's arrest began like any other at Al Zahra Medical Complex. Doctors hurried through hallways, nurses checked charts, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. Karim was scheduled for surgery at 8 a.m., and he arrived dressed neatly in his white coat, calm and composed, as though nothing had changed. But before he could enter the operating room, 2 officers stepped forward. Their presence froze everyone nearby. Karim tried to keep his voice steady when they called his name, but the handcuffs that clicked around his wrists made it clear. His double life had finally collapsed. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Forensic investigators had found traces of his DNA on the plastic sheet that wrapped Emily's body and a single fingerprint on the broken flashlight recovered beside her. Even more damning was the discovery of tiny fibers from his lab coat, woven into the fabric of her uniform. The reflection on the security footage, once blurry and uncertain, was enhanced enough to reveal the faint outline of his face. There was no room for doubt. The man who once saved lives had taken one in cold blood. During interrogation, Karim broke his silence for the first time. He insisted that Emily's death was an accident. He claimed they had argued in the basement after she threatened to expose their affair. In a moment of panic, he said he pushed her away and she fell, hitting her head. But the autopsy revealed multiple wounds, blows that could not have been accidental. His story fell apart under scrutiny, exposing the rage and desperation that had driven him to kill. The trial began 3 months later, drawing international attention. Reporters filled the courtroom, their cameras flashing as Karim was led in wearing a gray prison uniform, no longer the confident doctor who once commanded respect. The prosecution presented a detailed timeline of the affair, the threats, and the cover-up. They showed the messages Emily had saved, in which Karim had begged her to stay silent. They showed photos of them together, taken secretly by Emily, which revealed the depth of their relationship. The defense tried to portray Karim as a man under unbearable stress, a victim of his own mistakes. But the jury saw through the facade. After weeks of testimony, the verdict was clear: guilty of premeditated murder. Karim sat motionless as the sentence was read: life imprisonment with no chance of parole. The courtroom fell silent. His wife, Layla, was not present. She had already left the country with their children, unable to bear the shame. The hospital removed every trace of Karim's name from its records. His office was sealed, his plaques taken down, his achievements erased. Emily's body was returned to her family in the United States, where hundreds attended her funeral. Her parents wept as her coffin was lowered into the ground, unable to comprehend how a dream of helping others had ended in such horror. Years later, new nurses at Al Zahra still whispered about her. Some refused to work night shifts, claiming to hear faint footsteps in the basement or the soft echo of a woman's sobs. For many, the hospital would forever carry the memory of the young nurse who trusted the wrong man, and the doctor whose brilliance was devoured by his own darkness.